All right, y'all. So we are back. We have been talking for a long time about these growing pains and the fact that they are sort of a necessary evil in our lives. They're the things that really have been bringing us, or that we've been experiencing through transition in our lives as we are in our fields and in these programs of studying marriage and family therapy, and just what all of that looks like in our environment. I wanted to start out with a thought that I have been really mulling over for a couple of days. A couple of days ago, we were in class, and one of my professors was talking about the fact that she believes that a lot of the things that we go through, like, prepare us for the things to come that we're not even aware of. And so from there, I was thinking about, like, life experiences and even this context of us talking about growing pains, and thinking about even the ways that I think a lot of how I see individuals, like, choose things or find purpose, whatever that path to purpose looks like, often includes and involves a place of pain for them. It often includes, like, the thing that brings a lot of strife in their life. And so even recapping or reviewing a lot of what we talked about, we looked at imposter syndrome, and we looked at finding our voice, and we looked at priorities and boundaries and all these things. And as we talked about in the previous episodes, there is this aspect, for example, of finding your voice, that in a very ironic way, the people who struggle with finding our voices are the ones who uses our voices the most. Like, literally, it is our whole job. If I don't talk, then I don't have a job. And so both using our voice in session with clients, but also using our voices on the platforms that we're afforded, the opportunities that open up for us to speak on a certain topic or to hold a workshop or whatever that may be. I think it's just really interesting that for all of us, it is in these spaces that we often struggle with, but out of that struggle birth a passion for, and then are able to speak to, like, in light of these things. Have y'all found this to be, like, a similar thing for yourselves?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I find so funny about therapeutic work and even just conversations is, like, how much that parallel processing kind of happens, where we are, and then oftentimes as therapists, you can't sit there and vent out all the things that's going on in your mind.
Right.
But at the same time, so that back and forth isn't necessarily happening. But there is that unconscious, well, not unconscious, there's this conversations you're having within yourself as your clients are speaking or as a friend is speaking, and you begin to see yourself in them. You begin to see how the stories and the experiences that they have are similar. And I think all of that just boils down. It has shown me so much about how much we're all really connected as humanity, in our experiences and in our stories, and how they help to shape the way how God is really designed for us to connect with one another. I think it's a beautiful way how our stories and different experiences, how they shape our visions and our hopes for the future, the things that we're passionate about, the things that and we've talked about advocacy and justice, and those being very personal parts to each of the different kinds of work that we do. But I see it as a unique design and how God has just made us in a way to take care of ourselves well, in a way to take care of the world well. But it is a difficult experience to be a part of, because just because I see my experiences in you, I need to also be able to now give voice to those things. In a way where I may just be listening to a story, but I need to give voice. I need to give birth to my experience and to my process, and make it rich and personal to me, so that I can yield the learning process that comes out of that. So yeah, that's my thought.
As you're talking about childbirth or birth, I'm thinking about, like, so a lot of what we talk about is growing pains, which obviously requires growth. And I think a lot of what we have been talking through is the way that, like, this process requires that we continue to embrace opportunities that come our way, right? And whatever that looks like. And in the end goal, or at the end, there is some kind of purpose. And so I mentioned this in a previous episode, but in looking at like childbirth, like actual childbirth, the body in this process like does what it needs to do in the goal of bringing forth life. And so there are pains. I'm sure every mother would testify that the pain is excruciating. But also like there's this way of doing the necessary work in order to get the end. And the way that if a mother, for example, were to fight against the contractions, like essentially what they'd be doing is causing more pain and distress as opposed to going with the pain in order to birth the thing that should be birthed in the end. And so I think a lot of what we're highlighting is this like the necessity of this process and the fact that it is personal work, it is introspective work, it is constant work, but it's work that we think is worthwhile because in the end we get to whatever the goal is.
Man, in both of the things that y'all were saying, I guess I just want to touch on the fact that the work that and the growing pains, it's all humbling. Like that whole process of finding our voice and all of the things that we talked about this season and our boundaries and all these things, this whole process is humbling. This is the process. And I think it's also important, I think Lisa mentioned in previous episodes, that we understand how to accept our limitations as well. And what does that mean? Going back to you talking about voicing our needs, and that process is like, we are in multiple processes, like you say, parallel processing you brought up. So yeah, this one is difficult.
Yeah, you're asking what does that mean? And I think at the essence, what we're getting at is that this process is a process of lifelong learning. What it means is that I am always in this process of growth and development. What it means is that I'm not like settling, but I am pushing myself, contractions pushing. I am pushing myself through these things in order to get to an end. In the experience of parallel processing, or in the experience of finding our voice and whatever that means, it's a matter of like, again, lifelong learning in the fact of what am I asking myself today, right? How am I going to choose Jesus today? How am I going to set a boundary today? How am I going to set proper expectations of myself and the other person today? How do I recognize my limitations today? In a way of like, hopefully in the end of acceptance. And really what we're doing is daily submitting to the process of relinquishing control.
Right.
Often in our minds, I think there's some kind of picture of what growth should look like. And so we set these expectations, which, as we talked about, lands us in a place of imposter syndrome. And so like a lot of what we're doing in this work is releasing what our perspective is in the hope and the goal of gaining God's perspective on the thing, and really allowing the pain to bring us into the fullness of whatever that is. I heard a conference theme a while ago was exchanging my sight for God's vision. And I think in these things, it is like, how do I release the things that I see in order to take hold of the things that God sees? And these are the growing pains. It's the growing pains of coming to Lee that I think for most, if not all of us, was like I didn't see this in the story. For you, Dornique, like when you pictured college, it was Penn State. And so like, again, what are the ways that we're releasing or relinquishing control of these things in order to pursue growth?
I truly believe that in all of that this is such a beautiful process. Like we get to experience something so beautifully, and the fact that we don't stop growing, at least hopefully we don't stop growing. We have the ability to continually grow. Whoa, that word did not want to come out. We have that opportunity to continue to grow. And so yeah, it's just, there's a beauty in that, especially in, yes, there is pain, yes, there is hardship, and yes, we even talked about that idea of suffering and what does suffering look like. But I think there's a beauty in the fact that we don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
And so that is where our trust and reliance on God comes in.
Yeah.
If we're going to go spiritual just for 2 seconds, that is where
Come on,
We
somebody.
always go spiritual.
Well, for 2 seconds. Yeah, I do believe that is where our trust and reliance on God deeply come in.
Yeah.
When we don't have all the answers. But going back to the idea of it being humbling, like, because we don't have all the answers, we are constantly in this state of being humbled to learn and grow and continue that process. And it's not a cap at an age limit. Like,
oh, no.
this is where I think this podcast is for everyone. Like, this is not capped at an age limit. We hopefully when I am 90 years old, I could still tell you that I'm still learning something new, you know?
Yeah.
I'm still reading about something new. Yeah, that's the beauty in all of it.
Yeah, and I think for me with this, as you were talking, I was reminded too, for me, one of the beauties in this journey of being a lifelong learner for me is like constantly my definition of what is meaningful to me is being reformed. It's being changed. It's being renewed, and it just makes life so much more exciting for me. It makes because one thing about me, I don't like being stagnant. It bothers me. It bothers me, y'all.
Bother.
It gets under my skin. Because I recognize, and I think the reason why I don't like it is because I feel limited in stagnated places. And it's important for me to be able to not just like be surviving and going through the motions of life, but to be finding meaning and to being able to find joy in the midst of my experience.
Right.
Granted, it is not going to always be that way, because we've talked about the fact that growing pains is painful. They are painful. But you know, I found in this particular journey for me with God, that I've been having a refreshed understanding of myself. I'm having a refreshed understanding of who God is to me, how He wants to love me, how He is doing life with me. I'm having a renewed understanding of relationships and how they help to form me. I'm having a new renewed perspective of education and how wonderful it is that I get an opportunity to be able to continue to learn, to become more I become more refined in my understanding of just knowledge, period. And so this lifelong journey of learning, I think it helps us to be able to engage with all aspects of who we are in a more empowered way, where we can walk away from something and we can now begin to hope again. We can help to avoid burnout, and we can find rest as well, and not having to keep fighting. So anyway, there's many different elements of how we can look at this, but overall for me, I think I'm walking away with this aspect of like, I have a more anchored meaning that helps me to sustain in the process or in the experience of my growing pain.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I literally was thinking, I'm like, this is literally what our whole concept of being in the pursuit of purpose is about. Like,
Yo, I literally just looked at the definition of pursuit.
we are in the pursuit of purpose, and that is what lifelong learning allows us to have.
Yeah.
That constant pursuit of purpose, and not for that constant pursuit to be tiring, but I do believe that when our constant pursuit of purpose could be, we keep saying it could be beautiful, but I do believe that it genuinely can. That the whole time you were talking, I was like, this is about the pursuit.
I looked it up, and because I was like, I think we need to, like, we've been talking about in pursuit of purpose, but I was like, what does this mean, right, at the basis? One definition says to seek to attain or accomplish a goal over a long period. The other one says to continue or proceed along a path or route, right? And so in all that has been being talked about concerning lifelong learning, is this the consistent language within these definitions is a language of momentum and progress and movement, right? And so it is the fact that we are working against stagnancy, and we are saying like, okay, whatever this path and goal looks like, it is a long-term thing. So how do I stay in this for the long haul? What are the ways that I continue to challenge myself and ask myself questions and allow myself to be stretched in order to continue to pursue? Like, nothing about pursue is comfortable. A lot of times, this talked about to attack or something. Like, a lot of times the word pursue has a connotation of like some kind of war or stuff like that. Like, none of it is comfortable. It is not the easy way, but it is the beneficial way. And so I think in looking at like what pursuit looks like, we're getting at the fact that it's a lifestyle. Like, it is not just a thing that I hit and it's done, but the fact that whatever this looks like, academic, professional, personal, whatever, it's a thing that I'm ever growing and changing in. And the stretching is continuous, but also meaningful and essential in order to get to some acquired end.
I think I'm just thinking about those people who are like, what if I don't know my purpose, right? Because I think for most of us, we are starting to settle in the reality that this idea of therapy is where we're going to be, right? For most of us. No, I know. I'll be there. But for those people, I feel like that are struggling with this whole concept of knowing their purpose, I guess I just want to say to you guys particularly that the beginning of pursuing your purpose is when you begin to pursue God. And when you can pursue God, I think that is when you begin the pursuit of your purpose.
I mean, mic drop. Just drop it.
I just thought about those people because for a long time I didn't know what my purpose was. And I think when I was able to stop and ask God, like, what do you want from me? And I'm still not sure if the decisions I'm making are right. But I know that once I'm pursuing God, then I'm pursuing my purpose. And so, yeah.
I think those things often, though, and having conversation around purpose often feel very lofty and intangible. It feels like it needs to have a one answer. Like, what is my purpose? It's this.
Yeah.
And what I've learned in my experiences is that purpose is not one thing. It is the everyday thing, right? So how am I pursuing purpose and accomplishing purpose today is the key question. And the fact that if I am not doing it on a daily basis, I will wake up in 2023 or 2024 and be like, I still don't know where I am, and I still don't know what purpose looks like. But it is in the daily decisions. And so we've been talking about the fact that this is a lifestyle. Yes, it is with God, absolutely. But it is God guiding my path in the daily decisions and the daily things. If we're looking at this as like a full, like, physical journey, if we were to walk 3 miles, metaphorically, being in purpose today means, walking a couple feet, and tomorrow I'll walk a couple more feet. But if I'm not taking those small steps, those small strides, then the concept of fully pursuing purpose is unfathomable. If I see the things of today as useless, if I don't see them as meaningful, then pursuing purpose is an unfathomable feat.
This whole thing reminds me of like the quote like my dad said one time. It says, a person is revealed in time, not in the moment. And so that in itself gives longevity to the fact that we are constantly in pursuit.
We're in an ongoing process, and I don't know if it necessarily ever has an intended goal per se. I think it's something that's continuously like morphing itself into something else. And I think it's because the work has to keep going on.
Yeah.
The work never really has an end. And I love that quote by your dad because I think it helps me to have a bit more patience in the midst of the process of being a lifelong learner.
Let me tell y'all, I've been working on
Gailisa. And we've talked about Grace as well.
With patience.
What'd you say?
I said working on you with patience. And
me?
It's been working.
You working on me with patience?
It's been working.
Have you been conditioning me and I didn't know?
I have been conditioning you.
Oh my God. We have to talk about this. You've been conditioning me again? Guys, she keeps doing this experiment with me where she's like conditioning me to do things. And I just have no idea what she's doing with me.
It's not until we get the end result. But this is a constant pursuit of purpose right here.
And and I have to trust you in the process.
That's it.
to make sure that at the end of all of this, I'm a better person.
You are
I'm
revealed
growing.
You are revealed in time,
My God.
Not in one moment. That's
My
why
God.
we conditioning always.
I wish y'all could see what I'm seeing right now. I wish y'all could be in the room.
This a mess. Oh God. But for real though, I think in the midst of what your dad shared in that quote, it helps to remind me of the value of patience. And the value of going through the process, because in the midst of that, and right now I'm just thinking about like grapes and the process of like it being pruned, and it being crushed, and being morphed into a new thing.
Wine.
Okay, one accord. Oh Lord, the people love
That was too-
and one accord.
That was too quick for my liking, actually.
Listen, we was ready.
Oh my gosh. But yes, it goes through a process. And yes, the intended goal comes about. But it comes out in different ways. It comes out in different, like even in terms of the kinds of grapes you use, they come out in different ways and yield a different kind of result. And so I'm recognizing for myself personally how much I need to allow for myself to enjoy the process. There is much, and I think we talked before about like this complexity of emotions, this idea of like holding the more positive and the more negative emotions. And I've had to allow for myself to sit more in that and ask God and engage with life, engage with my experiences in a way that allow for me to yield some meaning and to anchor myself, to find some joy, I don't know, some more this is the word, connectedness with my journey. I want to be more connected with my journey, and I want to move with intentionality. And so I think that that patience aspect of it is something that I'm constantly having to remind myself of, because one thing about me, I like my things quick. I'm hungry, I will eat on time.
You see that?
Jesus.
If I'm ready to sleep, I want to go to bed. I want things on demand. And I'm having
today.
This is why I'm working on her, guys.
She's telling on herself today.
I mean, we gotta be honest. If we want to grow,
see the results in season 2. But Lisa, for real though, that concept, I think it reminds me of like the fact that we are planting seeds along our journey.
We are.
And then when we look back at the end of our lives, I want to see a bunch of fruit.
See, that's purpose.
Yes. I want to see a bunch of fruit that have been manifested into our lives because of all of the seeds that we planted along the way. But that goes back to being connected. If we in this space and we miss the people around us and the ability to connect with those people, and I feel like in some sense we may end up missing our blessings because we don't know where we're going to be in the next 10 years. We don't know who we're going to be in the next 10 years. And so yeah, I think that is important, that we are able to plant seeds, and seeds that are not going to have people look back on us and say, you know what? I don't want to ever see that girl again. Let me say this to Bahamian. I don't want to ever see that gal again. Ever. You know what I mean? So I do think it's important that we connect.
Yeah. I think to that point as well that I'm reminded of is the importance as well of recognizing that my process, the pruning that I'm going through, the churning, like trying to find all the different adjectives to describe
depressing,
the verbs that we have to go through, the pressing, the shaking, all those things that we have to go through. I think for me, one of the greatest fruits that I have seen out of that is recognizing that my process is not just for me. My mentor, Mr. Haven, I still call him Mr. Haven, like I've been out of high school for years, but anyway, Mr. Haven told me, I remember I was in high school and he told me this. He reminded me of the fact that my purpose, the things that God has gifted me with, they're not just for me. They are connected to a higher calling. They're connected to God.
Right. And
they're also connected to other people that I don't even know yet. And I have seen the manifestation of that as time has gone on, and I've allowed for myself to go throughout this pursuit of purpose. As I've allowed for myself to be a lifelong learner, I've began to see the fruit of the things that I've learned in the midst of that journey. I've seen that now happen in the experiences of the people that I'm now connected with.
Absolutely.
And even in that, the people that I don't know yet, I'm constantly cognizant of the idea as well that I feel like I have a responsibility to steward my pursuit well. And in the midst of me doing that well, I'm also covering other people that will become a part of my lifelong journey. And even though we haven't even talked yet, they're already covered because this is a part of what my purpose has kind of positioned me to do. And so yeah, I think one of the greatest things that I try to be cognizant of is this idea of who all is attached to me, who all is being affected by the decisions that I'm making in the midst of my lifelong process of learning.
Yeah, I think what you're bringing it to is basically what we started with, and the fact that we are prepared for things before they come, right? So you said you're seeing now that a lot of the things that, or a lot of the things that the people around you are dealing with are things that you've dealt with beforehand. And so really being equipped for the process. I think a lot of the growing pains is, a lot of the pain about pain is not having a full explanation and it not all making sense in the moment. A lot of the things that we're going through, we've been talking about how, like, in a reflective way, we see how we were grieving, or we see how we might have been dealing with anxiety and those kinds of things in the past, in a way now that I think we're able to speak into the lives of people. But at the time, it was like, this don't make sense, and I don't want to do this. I'm done. I'm over it. And so I think from, like leadership perspectives, or just any context where our voice is in the room, we get to have the privilege of being prepared. We get to have the privilege of being able to speak from an informed place, not just educationally, but also experientially, as we are planting these seeds.
Right.
As we're in these spaces and entrusted in platforms, we get to really leave meaning behind. We get to not just be I'm thinking about a Jamaican phrase. It's the empty barrels make the most noise. Like we're not there just to make noise, but we are there to bring impact and influence into these spaces that we're in.
Well, this has been incredible. This has been truly an incredible experience to be able to share just aspects of our journey and in real time, because you've heard us over the last couple of weeks battle with ourselves and each other in various topics. And we just want to say a huge thank you for joining us on our journey for season 1 of Booked, Blessed, and Busy, as we talk through this concept of growing pains. I think this is a good time for me to just go through a list of thank yous.
Yes. Let's say thank you to the people.
Thank you to the people. Yeah.
Who've made this
possible.
My God.
Yeah. So obviously, apart from saying thank you to my co-host, Gaylisa S. and Danielle G., I want to say a huge thank you to Aaron, who has edited all of our podcasts, and honestly just give us a lot of information that we didn't know we needed.
Yes.
So patient with us.
Yeah,
man.
she's
so
patient. Even when we mess up, she's be like, we'll fix it. But in a nice way.
Yeah, man.
Yes. And so Erin, for sure, we appreciate her. And then we want to say a special thank you to Antonio Dean. The first. I call him a musical genius, but also one of our dear friends. He created the music for the intro in our podcast. We told him our vision, and he kind of ran with it. So
gifted.
Yes, he's
and we
gifted.
could trust him with that. He was gonna do it.
Yes,
and do it well.
Yes, for sure. So he blessed us with that intro, and then we also just want to say a thank you to Antoine Dean as well, who gave us a lot of information leading up to this podcast.
He did.
The reason why we sound so clear in this mic is because Antoine told us what mic to get.
Yes.
Amen.
And so
he pointed us to the right equipment.
Yes. So we want to say a huge thank you to him, and then obviously a thank you to our parents and family who have supported us. Any avenue we decide to go into, they have supported us and told us that, you know what, it's possible. And so we are here because of them and all of our teachers and peers who have supported us thus far.
And so I think this is evidence that we turned out all right.
Yes, we are.
Your investment
all right. We are on our way. Yes,
it paid off.
My God,
we are on our way. And so stay tuned as we are preparing for season 2 of Booked, Blessed, and Busy It's been a pleasure. We hope that you join us next season.
Have a blessed day with Jesus.
God bless. Have a good one, guys.
Bye.